Well, the time has come. The video you guys have been waiting for. Except for this time, I demand respect as the reigning champion of the Influencer Prediction League. Calling me an influencer is a bit funny, but yes, I beat out all the competition to finally finish top of the table compared to everyone else. 6 points above Thogden, ahead of Tomlinson, Statman Dave, James Lawrence, Alcott, all your favorites. Don't worry, this absolutely has not gone to my head, nor will it create any lofty expectations from myself. No, but honestly, guys, predictions can ultimately be boiled down to just an educated guess. There's no science to it at all, which makes arguing about predictions or people getting caught in their feelings about a prediction from a creator very funny to me. But anyway, we'll do the full table as per usual. But it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Especially when speaking about the top 4 or top 7, as both Chelsea and Tottenham do not need to worry about European football. So that can only prove to be a boost for them and their new managers. Liverpool, they retooled their midfield and will get to decide how much effort they want to put into the Europa League. So they should absolutely mount a tougher challenge, so long as their defending doesn't lose sight of, well, their job. We'll see. I'm saying too much in this preamble. Let's get into it. Look, I'm not wishing this on anyone. Would be strange for a Benfica supporter to wish relegation on some newly promoted sides in the Premier League, no? But someone's got to go down. I'm sorry. And these are the teams that I see doing so. Luton Town is one of the best football stories you'll hear for some time. Everything about their promotion, from where they came from all the way to that playoff final win over Coventry, what the city and by extension the club have gone through over the years, and on it goes. Surely you saw endless social media posts about people having to walk through gardens and apartment buildings, etc. to get into the stadium, and on it went. There's a great narrative there. In some ways, they've already won just by making it to the Premier League. I've read plenty about what the Premier League money will do, not only for the club, but for the entire surrounding area. But, and I say this, through my fingers, guys, I think they're going right back down. I just don't see the quality for them to stay up. So don't hurt me, but this is a full table prediction. So unfortunately, I have to be brutally honest as to where they'll end up. I think they'll be in 20th. Last season, we had all 3 newly promoted sides stay afloat in the Premier League, while 3 relative mainstays in Southampton, Leeds, and Leicester all went down. Leeds are less of a mainstay, but you catch my meaning. This season, Adrian has already predicted that 2 of 3 newly promoted sides will go down, as I see Sheffield United dropping back to the Championship. Who knows, maybe they'll have a season like they did under Wilder a few years ago, where they were flirting with the top 4 to start the season. But now they must see what life is like without Billy Sharp, a man who has represented Sheffield United on 3 separate occasions, scoring 129 goals and getting 44 assists in that time frame. Of course, their performance isn't tied to a 37-year-old club legend who has recently left the club, but I worry about how Heckingbottom and the boys will readapt to the Premier League. There are a few remnants in the squad from their previous stint in the league, but I still see them struggling and getting 19th. Forest, the tricky trees. Well, they are indeed tricky to get a read on, aren't they? It's hard to track what's going on with their squad, as it seems like a new start every season, but to be fair to them, this summer hasn't been as hectic as the last, even if their owner is quite the magnet to, well, chaos. As you know already, I'm sure, he's also the owner of Olympiacos, as well as the president of the Greek Super... Wait a minute. That sounds like a conflict of interest, being the president of the league and a club. But anyways, we're not talking about the Greek Super League. We're talking about the Premier League. Forest took a fun ride last season, looking absolutely dreadful to begin with. I mean, when you have an all-new squad, that will happen. Then Steve Cooper managed to get them 4 points above the relegation zone, and they survived. A few important pieces who were loaned in ended up leaving, of course, and they haven't been as active this season. Not yet, at least. I do rate Cooper and what he managed to do last season, given the tough task that was on hand, but I don't believe lightning will strike twice for them. They narrowly escaped last season, and I see them just narrowly going down come May of 2024. Their final match is away to Burnley. More on them later, but that could be a relegation decider, perhaps, no? Wolves. Man, you guys were fun at one time. You were the cool new guys. Well, revamped guys, I should say, that had a relationship with a certain super agent that a lot of people were uncomfortable with, and you really leaned into that Portuguese culture at your club thanks to said agent. Now what has happened to you? Yes, Wolves brought in Julian Lopetegui last season, but it also feels like their moment has passed in a way. They were unable to hang on to their opportunity of being, I guess, exactly what Newcastle United has become, because that was the aim, or at least that was the dream with the kind of connections they have in the football world. But that fell flat as Wolves leaked goals and had an even harder time scoring them last season. Out goes Jimenez. In comes Mateus Cunha from Atletico, who at this point, I don't know how good he is anymore. He was so fun to watch in the Bundesliga, but he became another attacker that failed at Atletico. He got 2 goals and 1 assist from 20 appearances for Wolves last season, which was enough for them to pony up 50 million euros to sign him. I mean, I expect it to be a topsy-turvy season, but hey, Matt Doherty is back and he'll be comfortable in helping them to get 17th. 1 degree of separation from relegation. Matt Doherty really went on that. He really took the Kieran Trippier experience, didn't he? He goes to Tottenham, then he goes to Atletico. That's where the Kieran Trippier experience ends, I guess. I like Bournemouth, man. The run they went on last season under Gary O'Neill was fantastic to see, and I think caught everyone by surprise. I remember watching an episode of The Overlap, and this Bournemouth supporter that was there was overall comfortable with the fact that it seemed as though they would be going down, and they were resigned to that fact, only for them to crawl their way out of relegation on the 29th match day, climb as high as 13th, and then settle in at 15th. Comfy. Relatively. Well, O'Neill is gone, and in his place steps Andoni Iraola, who only started coaching in 2018, but is coming off of 3 great seasons with Rayo Vallecano. I mean, perhaps great is a bit hyperbolic, but Rayo Vallecano were greater than the sum of their parts under Iraola, which is what Bill Foley and the rest of Bournemouth will be hoping to see for the Cherries. In fact, you may remember Iraola from when Leeds United were searching for a Jesse Marsch replacement. Yes, he was the dude who wasn't allowed to leave Rayo Vallecano. He was a sought-after manager, and Bournemouth is where he's ended up. I think he's a good signing for them, and like some of the signings they've made, such as Milos Kerkez, that's a player that Benfica wanted. Romain Fèvre from Lyon. Justin Kluivert has a chance to sort of announce himself. We'll see what happens. It will be a tough season, but rather than rising from the grave, I think they'll start well and then sink down to about 16th. Aston Villa are a side that consistently burns me in the Premier League. I always think they're going to do much better than they end up doing, and wouldn't you know it, they now have a trap manager to get my hopes up. I love me some Unai Emery, and he showed the Premier League just what he is capable of last season. Playing some brilliant football with Villa, getting more points than pretty much every other side since Unai started, etc, etc, etc. And the acquisitions they've made this summer are nice as well. Moussa Diaby joins from Leverkusen, a player who, when he was going through purple patch after purple patch for a few years, he was linked with top clubs in Europe. Emery brings in a trusted soldier in Pau Torres to bolster the back line. They got Tielemans, another formerly sought-after talent, on a free from Leicester. I do want to keep an eye on the keeper position, as Emi Martinez has been linked to Inter, and if he should leave to Inter, they'll need to bring someone else. Other than that, they look good, and I think they'll get 9th. As much as I trust Unai Emery, his league form over an extended period of time across the entirety of a season doesn't always thrill me. He goes on great runs, he's fun in cup competitions, but there's a lack of consistency. I think that as much as people want to see Aston Villa surprising the nation and fighting for a European place, I mean, I guess they will do so, but it will be for a Europa Conference League place in my opinion. And well, I'm sorry, but my guess is that they'll finish 9th. Everton. Last season I predicted you would go down, and you were close once again. You are playing a dangerous game, my friends. However, in Sean Dyche, they found a savior, and in Sean Dyche, they found a fan in me. Mr. Gravel Muncher, Mr. Worm Eater, Exhaust Pipe Smoker.
So them 3 combined often are the things I use to keep this voice sounding how it is.
The big man will actually have to manage against Burnley, which will be a heart-wrencher, a heart-eater, to go by the theme of this Everton preview thus far, which has been a Sean Dyche preview thus far, let's be honest. Anyway, Everton have been a bit crap for a while, but I honestly believe that Danjuma could be a difference maker for them should he find his Villarreal form. That Spurs move was ridiculous considering the players he had ahead of him there, but at Everton, he'll provide some much needed firepower to help out Calvert-Lewin. Ashley Young was brought in for fullback options. not bad. And with Sean Dyche getting a proper preseason with the team instead of playing emergency rescue worker, I think Everton will improve incrementally this season, landing in 14th. I don't see them as having the quality to go much higher than that, based on what they've done so far in the market. Dyche is back, as is Mr. Hodgson as his career guidance counselor. His wife has sent him back to work, and Palace needed a worker. They also need some attackers as they struggled in front of goal last season, and now they've lost one of their best in Wilfried Zaha. He's finally left Palace for Galatasaray. Enjoy it, man. Eze and Olise could be trusted with carrying some of the offensive load, but Olise is, in particular, at least, well, Hodgson himself said that they will have a real fight on their hands to hang on to him. It looks as if Mateus França will join from Flamengo, but the Brazilian attacking midfielder is just 19, so some adjustment period will be needed for him to settle. I think the attack will continue to be an issue for Crystal Palace. While they have been a solid choice for the 11th through 14th places in the last few years, I think they'll slip this year. I don't think relegation is on the cards. I don't think so, but I could see them getting 15th. Speaking of the aforementioned Burnley, they're back, and they come with a familiar face at the helm in Vincent Kompany, a guy who, of course, you will know him from Manchester City, the Belgian national team, etc. But in his first year as a manager at Burnley, in his first big role as a manager at Burnley, he only went and won the championship for them, and they looked great in doing so. Fantastic defensively, fantastic going forward, some real talent in that team. I mean, I saw them in preseason against Benfica as well. They look incredibly solid and very difficult to break down. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And if you watch training videos from Burnley, you see just how involved Kompany is in passing off his invaluable experience and skill when it comes to defending to those young Burnley players. So I think that defensively, Burnley, no real issues. They're also doing some good things in the transfer market, bringing in, Swiss wonder kids, etc. So Burnley, I like it. Liam, I got you boys down at 13th. I was really impressed with what I saw both last season and in preseason thus far, namely against Benfica. They beat us 2-0. So let's see. It's just preseason, but let's see. I think that they're nailed on to stay in the Premier League, and I have them in 13th. Marco Silva and the Fulham fellas. That should be the name of their all or nothing-esque docu-series, should that ever come to fruition. Well, Marco Silva has voiced his displeasure with the lack of transfers at the club, though they have brought in Calvin Bassey from Ajax as a new centre-back, as well as 32 Raul Jimenez. Man, when did this dude age like this? It's crazy. Fulham were a bit of a headache last season, in a good way for them. Definitely doing far better than I expected them to. Just when I was expecting another yo-yo from them, they go and finish in 10th. 9 points, just 9 points from the Conference League. Bringing in Jimenez was necessary, really, as Mitrovic is begging for that move to Saudi Arabia to triple his wages. However, I think the price paid for Jimenez is a good representation of the player they are getting. Unfortunately, he hasn't been the same since that tragic head injury, and I don't know how it will work out for him at Fulham. And their attack in general is a little bit of a worry for me, but I don't think they'll slip too far, just down to 11th. Speaking of slipping down a place, I have Brentford in 10th this season, as I see them as having a similar season to the last in that they will be very impressive under Danish manager Thomas Frank. They will get big results against big teams, but will let themselves down a bit when it comes to their performances against sides that you would expect them to be beating from the lower half of the table. They made a double swoop to land both Kevin Schade and Mark from SC Freiburg, while Nate Collins joins from Wolves to bolster their back line. As was the case last season, Brentford's Moneyball approach under Frank will bear fruit, but I have them slipping from 9th to 10th, more so on the basis of the fact that I think that Chelsea will be much better this season, and rather than finishing behind Brentford in 12th, they're bumping everyone back as they'll finish ahead of them. Sorry, I kind of say that for myself as I was trying to figure out why I have Brentford dropping a place, even though I don't see them as being weaker than last season. Now I remember why. Chelsea were in 12th last season. That explains a lot. Speaking of 12th, that's where I have West Ham this season. I don't see them as being as poor as they were last term, but I don't see them as being as strong as they were during that 2021-22 season where they flew as high as 7th. The one thing that is giving me pause and causing me to think, maybe 12 is a bit high, is how they have lost an integral talent in Declan Rice, the guy who the media love to say makes everyone better. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that. It's just funny that that has been the chosen catchphrase that everyone has latched onto this summer. Anyway, it seems as though they will lose Gianluca Scamacca, Johnny Scams, as the Italian is looking like he's on his way back to Italy via Inter, possibly AS Roma. I know he was kind of a non-factor last season, so perhaps he isn't as big of a loss as you would think, in spite of his obvious ability that he wasn't able to show off. I mean, the whole side wasn't. But the lack of movement of any other transfers is what worries me a bit. But I think in August, they will splash some of the Declan cash. They've been linked with Edson Alvarez as a replacement for Rice, which I love. Alvarez is a great player. And should they bring in a decent striker, then 12th is easily reachable. Last season was an anomaly in my opinion. I don't think they'll slip up that far under Moyes again. Brighton, a team I actually got to witness in preseason live. They played some nice De Zerbi ball, only losing to Chelsea 4-3 on that occasion in Philadelphia. They had all of the hallmarks of what I loved from De Zerbi's Brighton last season. They were able to cut through Chelsea's backline at will at times, but they were just lacking potency in the box. And of course, the red card in the 59th minute didn't help them out at all. That's when Chelsea started really throwing on the goals. But anyway, Brighton have lost some key guys yet again, such as McAllister, but they've made some nice signings as well. Mahmoud Dahoud, formerly of Borussia Dortmund, adds genuine quality to their midfield. Not bad for a free transfer. João Pedro will try to aid their issues through the middle. He actually scored in the match I saw. Danny Welbeck is a great servant and can do a job in the Premier League. No shame in that. But to elevate themselves, they need the added quality. Also, Igor for just 20 million from Fiorentina feels like a steal as well. Should he adapt to the Prem? That's always the asterisk next to these signings, right? But yeah, it's been a typically smart window from Brighton to try to cover their losses within the squad, as they always have to do. With De Zerbi at the helm from the get-go, I think they will be just as difficult to play against, but again, without the benefit of a sleeping giant in Chelsea being, well, asleep, I think they'll slip down 2 places to 8th. And now we have the Europa League and Europa Conference League places. Newcastle United were superb last season and haven't suffered major losses to their squad. The most notable departure, of course, being Alain Saint-Maximin, I guess, who took off to Al Ahly in the Saudi Pro League, while Chris Wood's move to Nottingham Forest was made permanent. They lost their big Kiwi. Meanwhile, they signed Harvey Barnes and Sandro Tonali, as well as a young talent in Yankuba Minte, who's since been loaned to Feyenoord. I like the Tonali signing, as Newcastle's midfield is looking quite good. Better and better all the time. The Brazilian boy's in there. Now Tonali as well, who is basically a very, very tidy midfielder. I don't think he has one single characteristic that completely outshines the rest, all of his other traits, but he's going to be fun to watch in the midfield. He brings a lot of control, some coolness on the ball, a delicate touch, great vision. I think he's going to be good in there. With all of their acquisitions that they made over the last couple of years, they're building a strong young side with a great young manager, but I have to say it once again, guys, sorry. The only reason why I have them slipping back a little bit is because Chelsea will be different this year, as they don't have any European competitions to worry about, which is something that Newcastle will have to get used to, as they will be back in the Champions League this season. That said, their defense and midfield causes me to think that they will still trade blows with the top clubs, and I see them landing in 6th this season. Speaking of managers, I like the disrespect that Ange Postecoglou received upon his announcement was a bit odd, a bit unfair. If you look at his career trajectory, he's gone above expectations pretty much everywhere he has managed, doing well to elevate the club or country he is managing to a place they weren't at previously. And yes, even in serial winning Celtics case where he wrestled back dominance from Rangers. Remember Rangers had a moment there? Well, he took it back. Now, he has the unenviable task of elevating Tottenham back to the place where their supporters got used to them hanging out in, the Champions League. Unfortunately, with the way Tottenham has been run over the last few years, with the way the squad has been composed, that will be a bridge too far for them in my opinion, and despite me enjoying Ange a ton, I think that it will be difficult for them to get higher than 7th at the moment. Still, that's an improvement upon last season's 8th place finish, as I see them getting above Brighton, thanks to Spurs not having to worry about European competitions this season, as I said. Not to mention, should they lose Harry Kane? Well, it could be worse for them if, and it's a big if Ange can't get the most out of Richarlison, for example. Manor Salomon, who impressed at Fulham last season, has joined with some stat heads pointing to him as being the unsung hero signing of the summer for Spurs, while James Maddison, if he can stay healthy, will fill a role through the middle that Spurs have been without for some time. Reasons to be optimistic, but I see this first season under Ange as building the base for future success and higher finishes than the 7th that I'm seeing for this season. Hard to pin exactly where Man United will land this season. There were great strides made last season under Erik ten Hag, winning a League Cup and getting back into the Champions League was a solid start, looking good in 3rd place, but still 9 points behind Arsenal and 14 behind City. Again, that's a good start, but have they done enough this window to take them beyond those teams and others, honestly? I mean, the signing of Onana in goal is a massive one as he completely changes just how United will be able to play. On top of being a fantastic shot stopper, he also commands his box and is very vocal, while also being completely comfortable with the ball at his feet. You couldn't say the same of David De Gea, who was allergic to using his feet, which made playing from the back impossible for United. Just watch how Onana's ability with the ball at his feet, as well as his supreme distribution, makes the difference for them going forward as well. Having someone who can actually control the ball and play passes with the defenders and not just be standing in goal completely out of the play, it's going to make a huge difference. Just look at all the nice things that Guardiola had to say about Onana, right? They also moved on Anthony Elanga, Alex Telles, have signed Mason Mount and Johnny Evans, the latter of which being a decent backup option for cups to cover injuries. I don't mind that signing at all for what it is. Mount, by the way, has looked fairly decent for Man United in preseason and surely will relish this chance to start anew as things had soured between himself and certain Chelsea supporters. Now, whether they signed Højlund or not, I don't know that Højlund is the 25 to 30 goal striker that United have been looking for quite some time. He could become that in the future, but he isn't there yet. He's incredibly raw materials that need to be refined a bit under Ten Hag before he can be seen as the player that elevates their attack to an all-new level. I think he'll still be effective, but he's not going to elevate it to the place they want it to be at. When I look at United, I like the direction they're going in, but I just see that both Liverpool and Chelsea, who again, are without European competition in Chelsea's case, have improved themselves more than United has. So that's why I see United being in 5th. They'll probably make the semis of 1 or 2 domestic cup competitions again though, and maybe they'll do well in the Champions League. But I think that 4th will just be snatched from them right at the death. It's been all change at Liverpool, at least when it comes to their midfield. This was the area that we spoke of them needing a revamp. Everyone spoke of their midfield needing a revamp, really. And they've only gone and done it. Henderson, Fabinho, Keita, Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, all of them are gone, while Fabio Carvalho also left on loan. Who have they brought in so far? Alexis McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, and it's looking as if Romeo Lavia will join them as well as the Fabinho replacement. We'll see though, hasn't been confirmed yet, but if that is to be their midfield, considering how good Curtis Jones and sometimes Harvey Elliott looked last season, they still have Stefan Bajcetic, they still have Thiago, that's a much needed midfield revamp sorted. On top of that, Firmino has taken off to Saudi Arabia, but with Luis Diaz and Jota finally healthy, Gakpo looking really good, Liverpool's attack is looking nice. Also, I always maintained that Darwin Núñez would be a 2nd season signing. Let's see if that happens. I still have faith in the guy. He's funny to watch, but he can be effective. Let's see how it plays out. They've been looking great in preseason. One thing I don't like is how Liverpool didn't make a single signing for their back line, which I personally think they could use a right back. Yes, I fall into the play Alexander-Arnold in the midfield camp, as I think signing a reliable right back defensively and playing Alexander-Arnold to his strengths in the midfield is their best option. You still get the benefits of his distribution, but lessen his defensive burden by a lot. Anyway, the backline is the only thing that gives me pause. I think that as soon as the new signings are used to Klopp and his approach, that Liverpool will sparkle going forward once again, with Salah becoming more of a creator this season than a goal scorer, I think. I think he's sort of shifting in that direction, with my only worry being at the back for Klopp's side. Who knows? If they sign Lavia, then perhaps having some cover for the back line will make all the difference, but that stands out as their biggest weakness compared to the rest of the pitch, in my opinion. I have them in 3rd. Now to Chelsea, who I saw during the Premier League Summer Series. I didn't post about it on YouTube, but you guys should follow me on Instagram and TikTok if you want more Rabona TV, because I don't always post all of my shorts to YouTube. Anyway, it was cool seeing Chelsea play. They beat Brighton 4-3, as I spoke of previously, and I have been very impressed with them this preseason. Just preseason, yes, I get it, but they took part in the summer series over here in North America, seeing how they match up to other Premier League sides, not random sides from the Swiss 3rd division or something, and they looked the best of the bunch. The massive clear out that Chelsea conducted, man, Saudi Arabia has been quite the savior for these top teams that need to make weight. But Chelsea has been one of the main benefactors with a much needed yard sale of talent. Look at this list from Transfermarkt, man. Havertz, Mount, Kovacic, Koulibaly, Pulisic, Mendy, Loftus-Cheek, Ampadu, Kante, Azpilicueta, Aubameyang. 11 guys gone. Wild, but necessary. They basically had their summer window in the winter, as Chelsea's players were on vacation from February or March onward. However, Nkunku and Jackson are the main signings of the summer, and both have looked fantastic for Pochettino. When it comes to Jackson, we discussed him on the channel back in May of last season. The star of the show for me, Nicholas Jackson, who scored his 8th and 9th goals of the season for Villarreal from 22 La Liga appearances. However, 7 of those 9 goals have been scored in his previous 7 appearances for Villarreal. So it feels like we got a rising star on our hands, perhaps. Keep an eye out for the 21-year-old Gambian-born Senegalese striker. And he has certainly looked incredible in preseason, extremely fast, but with a delicate touch. He can run in behind, he can combine well with his teammates in tight areas, he has great vision, he can set up goals, he can finish them himself. He's looking like he could be the striker that Chelsea has been missing for ages. Bit of a tough position to succeed in at Chelsea over the years, A bit of a graveyard for strikers. When you add in Nkunku, Mudryk, Sterling down the right, who is great and fits and bursts for Chelsea, plus a midfield with Enzo Fernandez and perhaps another signing to free Enzo and allow him to get forward a bit in the midfield, I really like the looks of Chelsea under Pochettino. Interested to see what happens with their defense, and I'm not convinced with Kepa in goal, but I think that with the lack of European football, Chelsea will start strong, have a hard time in the winter with their bad defending, but find themselves again in the spring and snatch 4th place from United. And the final 2 remain, Arsenal and Man City. Let's start with Arteta's side, who have been a free-spending Arsenal in the last few years, haven't they? Their squad needed investment, and the Kroenkes have delivered. You can't say otherwise, man. The only 2 sales they've cashed in on are Xhaka at 15 million euros and Pablo Mari at 4.9 million. However, they spent 116.6 on Declan Rice, 75 on Kai Havertz, and 40 on Jurrien Timber. With last season's performances, coupled with this great investment, will bring great expectations from Arteta and Arsenal. And they looked so good for long stretches last season, but to be chased down by Manchester City, that's not an easy mental game to play when you have serial winners behind you. Serial winners that will go on to take the treble, by the way. With all of the change at Arsenal, they are still taking the proper steps towards becoming serial winners themselves. The 2020 FA Cup that they won was nice, but since then, they've only had a 2021 Community Shield to celebrate. It's about time they win something. Season upon season, they have improved under Arteta, which is a credit to the board for sticking with him and allowing him to cook, so to speak. And I expect to see them with a trophy of some sort this season. Havertz is a complete mystery to me. I mean, he was so good at Leverkusen, pretty bad at Chelsea, but given a new life at Arsenal, my expectations of him are pretty low despite the price they paid for him. So I'm hoping he will get back to that Leverkusen form because he's so enjoyable to watch when he's on song. But we haven't really seen that in England, or at least not at extended periods of time. Declan Rice is a fantastic signing. I'm just curious how much they will be missing the grit of Granit Xhaka in the midfield, not to mention how effective he was in general for Arsenal under Arteta the last couple of seasons. And Timber, fantastic addition to the back line, which Saliba's injuries last season showed how much they needed depth in that position. He can also play as a fullback as he filled in for an injured Zinchenko at times in preseason. Just all around a very solid signing for them. And speaking of preseason, I like what I've been seeing of Leandro Trossard, as he has looked pretty lethal for them, just as he had shown last season how dangerous he could be. He wasn't the Mudryk signing that they so badly wanted, but he's been a great player for Arteta, and I expect that to continue as Arsenal look good going into this season. And then you have Manchester City, who haven't gone with a full revamp as Chelsea have, but they've lost formerly integral players such as Gundogan and perhaps less so Riyad Mahrez. So far, they've signed Mateo Kovacic and Josko Gvar. Oh, oops. That signing hasn't been confirmed yet, as there was a here we go misfire from Fabrizio Romano, and it's looking like it could be any day now. Guardiola under Guardiola is quite the dream team. Solid defender, great on the ball as well. Perfect Guardiola center back once he's settled in. They've also been linked with Jeremy Doku, the young Belgian attacker, and Rafinha as they look to bring in replacements for Mahrez, tricky wingers. Funny to say that, given Mahrez was a sub in crucial matches at times, but they need some depth. Bernardo seemed like he was on his way out, which shows why they are looking for options on that side of the pitch. However, some quotes from Bernardo point to him maybe staying. I don't know, his future is up in the air in the summer every year it seems. Maybe the treble stoked a fire in him to stay to try and defend the crown, or maybe to leave and try a new challenge. I don't know. The likes of Kyle Walker are linked with a move away. Cancelo is looking like he'll leave, but he was already gone. There's a bit of a mystery at City, but when you consider all that and take a look at their squad and just who their manager is, it's hard to see them finishing anywhere but in the top two. Are they worse than Liverpool or Chelsea at the moment? No. Are they better than Arsenal? Yes, they proved that a few times last season. Arsenal have tried to close the gap with the signings they've made, and we'll see if they can do so. City's window is a bit confusing in some ways, but there is still time for them to sign players, that's for sure. And I think once Guardiola is sorted, they'll look to a right-sided attacker. Rafinha has been mentioned as a possibility. We'll see if it happens. He already has Premier League experience. He'll do great. Anyway, transfers or not, City are still the best team in the league and the standard that has been set. Haaland was ridiculous in his first season, and should he continue to develop under Pep in his second season, which you'd expect him to do so, he'll be scary as hell. On top of this, we saw Guardiola shift how City played about the midway point of last season. Yes, I'm talking about Stones in his hybrid role again. And as Guardiola continues to develop these tactics, they will only get better. I have City just beating out Arsenal, and I think it will be a proper title race once again. As we look at the full table here, feel free to give it a pause, but this is how I see it all playing out. Anyways, guys, as always, these are ultimately a coin flip, and you're lucky if you get any places right. Make sure you tell me your predictions, though. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. A long one. I'm Adrian. This is Rabona TV, and we'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the season.